Would it be your pleasure, Lindsay? Good afternoon, colleagues. Welcome to this meeting of Inverclyde Council, Local Police and Fire Scrutiny Panel. This meeting has been held remotely and also in person, and we're filmed and recorded for live subsequent broadcasts available through the Council's website. The Council is a data controller under General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record Council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with Council published policies available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded that all of the Council's established meeting protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and the comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. Thank you for that. We move on to agenda item number 1. Would you do a roll count, please?
We have apologies from Councillor Law. We'll now move to a roll call. The following members, please indicate if they are present at the meeting, either in person or remotely. Councillor Cassidy.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Crowther.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Daisley. Councillor Hellier.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Jackson.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Moran.
In the chamber.
Robist.
Present online, remotely.
Councillor Quinn.
Present remotely.
Councillor Reynolds.
Present remotely.
Councillor Wilson.
Present in the chamber?
Are there any declarations of interest?
No. Thank you for that, colleagues. We move on to agenda item number 2, Performance Management, Police Scotland Performance Report. Chief Superintendent.
Thanks. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. I'm pleased to present Police Scotland Performance Summary Report for Inverclyde, which covers the period from the 1st of April to the 31st of 2025. As always, this report highlights areas of significant operational success, whilst also drawing attention to specific challenge that has required and continues to require our continuing dedicated focus along with our valued partner agencies. So to begin with, incident and demand analysis, overall crimes and offences in Inverclyde have increased by 15.6% year on year, resulting in a total of 5,093 recorded crimes. This local increase tracks slightly above the national trend, which saw a 7% rise in recorded crimes and offences across Scotland during the same reporting period. Despite this rise in recorded crime, the overall number of police incidents has decreased by 4.6%, totalling 13,244. And it's crucial that I provide some context to these figures. 81% of incidents reported to us do not result in a crime being recorded. A vast proportion of our daily demand continues to be centred around vulnerabilities, welfare concerns, assisting members of the public, and ensuring broader public safety. I should also highlight that the decrease in overall incidents is largely due to a reduction of almost 44% in abandoned or silent 999 calls, following technical solutions to address accidental emergency dials from certain smartphones. When we exclude those specific call types, we actually see a slight rise of just under 1% in recorded police incidents. Incident types that contribute to this include a 9.2% rise in concern for person calls and a 103% rise in bail and curfew press checks, reflecting our local proactive approach to monitoring those individuals within the community. Importantly, our overall detection rate for crimes and offences remains strong at 70.6%, which sits comfortably above the national rate of 66.7%. Turning to violence, disorder and antisocial behaviour, we recorded a total of 627 crimes of violence, representing a modest increase of 1%. The vast majority of these, 88%, were common assaults, which rose by 1.7%. However, it's very encouraging to note that crimes of serious violence decreased by nearly 4%, with 74 crimes recorded. Around 19% of violent crimes were identified as being linked to domestic abuse, with common assault remaining the most frequent domestic-linked violent crime. Furthermore, whilst 47% of crimes and violence occurred within residential dwellings, this private space violence has actually fallen by almost 8% compared to the previous year. Repeat offending and victimisation continue to be a focus, with 85 repeat offenders and 90 repeat victims identified. In terms of weapons, we recorded 155 offensive and bladed weapons, an increase of 16.5%. 89 of these related to the use of weapons in other criminal activity. Possession of weapons in any environment clearly has no place in Scotland and Inverclyde, and is entirely unacceptable. To address this, our community police officers, along with our partnerships and preventions team, have been delivering programmes like No Knives, Better Lives across Inverclyde schools, and will be working in partnership with Morden Football Club regarding this message. We will continue to use ethical tactics in the community, such as stop searches, to get weapons out of the pockets of the community. While complaints regarding disorder increased by 2.3% to 1,621 incidents, crimes involving damaging reckless behaviour fell by 9.4%. Notably, crimes of willful fire raising have fallen to their lowest level in 5 years, with just 16 crimes recorded, and there have been fewer vandalisms and culpable and reckless conduct offences. We recorded 79 hate crimes with a detection rate of 59.5%, where race and sexual orientation were the most targeted, protected characteristics. And a number of those targeted individuals are police officers in the course of their duty. Protecting vulnerable people remains at the heart of our operations. Sexual crimes have increased by 46%, with 108 crimes reported. Specific crime types, which increased most significantly, were causing to view sexual activity or images and indecent communications. This rise is driven by a couple of factors. Also an increase in non-recent reporting, where around 22% of recorded crimes occurred more than 1 year prior to reporting, and a doubling of those cyber-enabled sexual offences, which now account for 1/3 of those crimes, and a slight increase in sexual offences linked to domestic abuse. So it's worth noting that we have seen a rise in a relatively small number of victims, featuring in a high number of Group 2 crimes, suggesting the rise in reported offences is also due to the depth of investigation that we are undertaking, going beyond those initially reported offences and identifying additional crimes perpetrated against reporters, in addition to improving some of our recording processes around those crimes. And of course, our partners have a large part to play in increasing that and assisting us in those conversations with victims. Domestic abuse incidents increased by 2.3% to a total of 629. Of these, 43.6% resulted in a crime being recorded, with common assault, threatening or abusive behaviour, bail offences and vandalism being most prevalent. Our multi-agency collaboration, including MATAC and MANAC frameworks, remain absolutely critical in safeguarding these victims. In the reporting period, late 2025, we ran and took part in the 16 Days of Activism campaign, which you may remember, which saw positive engagement in Inverclyde, including the Don't Be That Guy campaign, which used a podcast series to challenge harmful attitudes. I'm very pleased to say that DCI Danny Clark, who was a key figure in that campaign, is now the DCI for our public protection unit within the division. On a highly positive note, missing persons reports fell significantly by 31.3% to 147 reports. Most notably, episodes involving care experienced young people going missing from children's homes fell by 54.5%, a direct testament to our ongoing partnership and interagency training. As part of that partnership engagement, we have amended the return discussion process within Inverclyde, whereby police officers do not automatically carry this out. This allows officers to be redeployed elsewhere, but also make sure that the right conversations are taking place with the individuals who are going missing to safeguard them from future episodes. Communications have now also gone out across Inverclyde Care and Education for nominations to attend work experience with us, which is aimed at young people who are currently involved with crime or going missing or coming to our police attention or police attention in some other way. This experience will run in May 2026 and is unique to our division and is part of our corporate parenting plan and engagement with young people. Tragically, we recorded 8 suspected drug-related deaths this period, alongside 83 near-fatal overdoses. 8 suspected drug-related deaths is a reduction on typical levels, however. In April to December 2024, there were 14 drug-related deaths, with the same number also recorded in April to December 2023. As such, this figure is around a 43% reduction on previous typical levels. To provide context as to where we are now, 1st of April 2025 to date, there were 11 suspected drug-related deaths in Inverclyde, and in the same period in the previous year, there were 19. So a reduction of 8 on position year to date. Regarding inquisitive and cybercrime, crimes of dishonesty increased by 20.4%, totaling 1,268 recorded crimes. This increase is overwhelmingly attributable to a significant rise in retail crime. Almost 68% of acquisitive crimes targeted commercial premises, with 732 crimes of theft by shoplifting recorded, an additional 181 crimes on the previous year. Repeat offending, again, is a major factor here, with over 60% of individuals charged having at least one further shoplifting offence on record this year. We are working closely with local businesses and have now liaised directly with some of the national leads for our big businesses impacted by this, with numerous actions going forward where premises are reviewing their storage and security measures, and particularly those that are causing us the biggest demand in the local area. So we are continuing to be supported by the National Retail Crime Task Force to proactively tackle the issue, as funding will be extended for a further 3 years to continue those endeavours. Other crimes of dishonesty have fallen within Inverclyde. Acquisitive crimes targeting motor vehicles have seen a reduction, and I'm pleased to report that housebreaking crimes have fallen into a 5-year low, with 71 crimes recorded, a drop of 16.5%. Fraud and cyber digitally enabled crime continues to be a key threat, increasing by 6.5%. To 114 crimes, driven by our ever evolving cyber environment. So finally, moving on to road safety, another critical area where we've seen really positive developments over the period, and we will continue to drive this through our new driver campaigns to 6 pupils in Inverclyde schools and along with our colleagues in roads policing. Road traffic casualties have fallen sharply by over 23%, with 36 casualties recorded. This includes 14 serious injuries, down from 20, and 21 slight injuries. We recorded a 31.9% increase in road traffic offences, totalling 952, with a rise in all fatal 5 offences. This is the direct result of deliberate and proactive enforcement by our local officers and collaboration, as I say, with our roads policing unit. National initiatives such as the Drink Drive campaign in December and Operation Dark Night and Operation Drive Insured are central to this strategy, ensuring that robust intervention measures today prevent serious casualties tomorrow. I'm delighted to report also that complaints and allegations at police have reduced in Inverclyde, and the rollout of body-worn video is expanding to Inverclyde on the 21st of April 2026, which will assist both officers but also members of the public in having confidence in policing. In Inverclyde, 33.1% of respondents felt that police were doing a good job in their area, which is an increase on the national average. However, still quite clearly opportunities there for improvement. I will continue to listen to concerns raised by the local community, ensure that our resources are directed to the right places at the right time and where they are needed most. And that concludes my summary of the performance reports for this reporting period. I would like to thank you obviously for your continued support, and I'm very happy to take I'm happy to take any other questions.
Thank you, Chief Superintendent. And colleagues, I put the meeting open to questions. Councillor Elliott.
Thanks, Convener. It's regarding the weapons offences to the Chief Superintendent Fraser. Obviously, there's a number, very high, dangerously high number of weapons recorded and recovered.
So which page are we on?
We're on page 7,
Thank you.
weapon offences recovered, with a 16.5% increase. And it's a number that nobody wants to see in any matter of society. Despite the fact we do have positive campaigns ongoing with the community partnerships, school programme, community policing still acting engaged in this, I would sort of direct it towards 2 points here is, despite these campaigns, we still have a high number, so what can we move forward to get that number reduced? And also, a second point would be to ask if somebody is found to be in possession of a offensive weapon, is it still the case that they are kept in custody to appear at court in the next lawful day?
Thank you, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you.
Chief Superintendent?
So, yeah, I do share your concerns in relation to the number of offensive and bladed weapons. I would add to that, though, and I don't think it's contained in the report, but the levels of proactivity within the local, not just community police, but proactive unit and response teams is high. We've seen significant numbers of increases in our proactive stop searching of right individuals at the right time, but also road traffic stops and all of those other opportunities that we have at our disposal. And that has led to the increase in these weapons offences and detections, to be quite honest. So I don't think necessarily there are more, but I think we are doing more to be able to detect and take them off the street. You mentioned a couple of the initiatives that I had raised before, but also now what we're really trying to push is some of the engagement, particularly with our young people. And I mentioned the work experience, which is particularly targeted towards people that are coming to our attention. And some of those offences, or some of the reasons that they're coming to our attention, is because they've committed offences, particularly weapons offences. Because clearly they don't only impact on potentially other members of the public, but on that individual themselves in terms of their opportunities going forward, the likelihood of it being directed towards them and putting themselves in really vulnerable and dangerous situations. So we're using preventative measures along with partners to make sure that we're hitting the right people, to make sure that these campaigns are directed towards the individuals that need them most, because there's really no point in going into schools if we're not going to be heard by the right audience and if we're not going to make that right difference. So again, getting the football clubs involved is a really positive move as well. It adds credibility to the message as well. So anything that we can do in terms of that prevention space, we are doing. In terms of the custody arrangements, so custody, as you know, it will be assessed on an individual basis, and again, it can depend on a number of factors. The age of the individual is probably the most obvious one, because we're not going to be keeping a child's custody. So there'll be a number of factors involved in the decision making on whether we are or are not keeping that individual in.
Thank you.
And if it was a juvenile who is in possession of an offensive weapon, what's the procedure for having them reported as quick as possible?
In terms of getting the paperwork submitted, again, that's...
Yeah, I mean, it's dealing with it, despite the fact that it's a juvenile, obviously it's still a serious crime to be in possession. So what would be the reporting procedure to have that dealt with as quickly as possible?
So the individual, obviously, if they've been picked up by the police, which I would imagine they had, more than retrospectively, they will get dealt the same as anybody else. To be honest, it will be progressed ASAP in terms of the paperwork, in terms of the notification to the partners. We'll go through the notification, but it will happen there and then. It'll almost be instant for the officers, put them on the paperwork, getting submitted through for the kind of triage across partners, and then for whatever that multi-agency approach looks like towards that individual. And that will depend again on a number of factors, whether they're already involved, whether they're already with social work, whether they've got a footprint in education or not, what our opportunities are to intervene, and if it's their first, second, third offence, if they're within local authority care, all of these things will have an impact. But there's absolutely no delays in moving with that. And if they are still at home, if they still have parents, they will be going straight home to parents, so they will be getting left in their care, or again, if it's a care environment, then they'll be going straight back to staff and getting dealt with in that manner. So it's a really tricky one to give you reassurance, because they will not be held in custody as a child. But we have a number of partners involved in the decision making around what happens next, and it really depends what their pathway is at that particular time that they commit that offence.
Thank you, Superintendent. I think that the increased road traffic activity initiative has been very helpful in protecting things. And please don't stop and search. I think that's been absolutely valuable to us. We've got the full support of this committee as far as stop and search is concerned. Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, just looking at news, the rolling cameras that rolled out this month in Inverclyde, I think we should say that will go some ways to help increase public confidence and also provide your officers with an additional evidentiary tool as well. So that's good news. My first kind of question is around retail crime. We should say that's went up. We know it's went up nationally. There's that funding package there for the next 3 years, I think, which you mentioned. I think the last time you mentioned about the kind of day of action you had, and I'd say to you, I think next time if you do that, because you kind of publicise that, because I wasn't even aware it was happening. I was just wondering whether there's any plans in the near to immediate future to do a day of action again.
Yeah, so certainly will be. We have to tell you that national pot of money in our line have secured a small part of that money to fund various action plans against retail crime. It is a problem, we know. For us, a big part of it are the days of action, but it's also the preventative work into it as well. There's been some terrific engagement with some of the big retailers in Inverclyde in the last probably 3 to 6 months, Tesco, Morrisons, etc. Some of these retailers find themselves in a position where superstores that they have, albeit they're in different towns, will not talking to one another or communicating with each other about the retail crime that they had. So if the Tesco store in Glasgow, for example, was to kick someone out in Bath from the shop, they wouldn't contact the Tesco store in Greenwich to let them know they just kicked out so-and-so and he's not to get in again. So building those kind of bridges and building those lines of communication between the big retailers, etc., and the wardens as well, have been a part of it. They've been really valuable in trying to drive down this epidemic, this national epidemic of retail crime. The day of action that we spoke about, I think the figures in the last time was really good. We did it just before Christmas, and did it purposely to target that kind of busy time of shopping. Locked up a number of individuals. We'd be looking to do similar days, targeted days of action again in the coming months. Like I say, just funding again as the new financial year starts. But also on a weekly basis, I roll out additional numbers over time. We'll also take advantage of to patrol the retail areas and target those who we know are out and about and are actively involved in retail thefts. And then the main item that's continually stolen is, of course, alcohol, which is then distributed, whether it is the community sold on to others, etc., and is used and involved in disorder. So it is a big problem. We are aware of it. We are putting resources into it. We're spending money on it, and we're hoping to turn the corner with it in the coming months.
Okay, thanks for that. I appreciate it. It's good to hear we've got some funding through that national scheme. So my second question, Chief Superintendent, is part of my usual question. Last time you were here, you were hoping there was going to be some positive news for us in the future for Greenwich Police Station. We're now, well, by December this year, it'll be 4 years since the process started. So I'm wondering when can we expect some news on this?
Chief Superintendent.
I would be very disappointed if this didn't come up. So yeah, I do understand the frustrations as I say every time, it is high on my priority list as it is on yours, but I do appreciate you been doing this for longer. So I understand your frustrations. We are so close. I mean, as you'll know, that we did have a launch event organised last week before, and unfortunately had to be postponed. Kind of out with our control, but that will
be... It was a Monday at 1:30.
It was, but that will be rescheduled very soon. I can assure you we are still moving at pace towards a preferred option, and that is still on the board. Nothing has changed. There were just some circumstances out of our control at that particular time. So the picture is still positive, and as far as I'm concerned, and hopefully I'll be able to update you by the next board. I wouldn't want to sign that in blood, but hopefully by the next board we'll have that launch event, and we'll be here talking more positively about the future of the office.
Councillor Kirsten.
Thanks, no, I think it's great if we can get something before the next committee, because we've just been waiting almost 4 years now for that. So, it's frustration for all of us here in this panel, and what is for your officers as much as I'm sure for yourself as well. So that's great. I just want to say as well, I want to put record some thanks to the Chief Inspector this week for the launch of the antisocial behaviour plan for Inverkit Women's Bay. I've seen some positive news about some alcohol being seized, so hopefully that'll be a sign of some progress going forward. So I appreciate the work you've done on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Moran.
Thank you. I don't get that actually with me, but I remember back today when I was keeping our safe to the communities, and we had the No Like Better campaign launch here in Inverclyde. And then one that got flanked by all come down, and the Justice Secretary was kind of a cast of all people. We also had the victims of crime there, and it was a big launch out. You were issue. But my question to the Chief Spec was, do you think that ran its course, that particular No Life Better, No Life Better, No Life Better Lives campaign, and do you think it's worked? Because if you look at the figures here, they certainly didn't appear to work as much as we would hoped it would have been. So would there be a case for a relaunch of that initiative to get people more aware of it again? Because obviously with the increase in the crimes, with the weapons, it's something we don't want to see here. And we did put an awful lot of work and energy into that to launch it. And I say I was part of the launch, so it really is disappointing to see it. It's not really worked out as much as we hope. So, what's your thoughts on a relaunch or just?
So I think yes, I think it still has a place, absolutely, because for every new year, every child that comes through is a new audience, and it absolutely needs to be refreshed. But it needs to be relevant, it needs to be current, and it needs to be relatable. And that's where we're looking for constant ways to try and improve. How do we reach? How do we get ourselves onto the online platform in schools? Who's the best person to deliver these? How can we work in partnership to be more efficient and to reach wider audiences? So these are things which are evolving with every year. And yes, as I say, that it is disappointing that there are that number of offensive and weapons and bladed instruments out there, but we are very, very proactive, and so many of them have come from proactive policing. And I do appreciate they have to be there to be detected, of course, but I'm not discouraged from the campaigns that you reference. I believe they're absolutely crucial for us to continue to push the message. Will we ever get to a point where we have zero offensive weapons or bladed instruments on the street? We'll just not reach that. But just now, the campaigns that are in place are constantly evolving to try and reach in the most relevant current way that we can the community that are out there.
Yeah, I mean, when we did launch it, there's a big mural outside of the shops in Common Road of a young man stabbing a young man in his line, and the community were up in Ireland about it now. They went crazy because that's the last thing they want to see on the side of the shops. So they took it down quite quickly. But to me, I emphasise the community were interested. They were going to help. So if it's run its course, maybe we go into phase 2 of it, or we relaunch it. I don't know, but certainly with the figures going up, maybe a lot worse. We never had the campaign. It might have been a lot worse position.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the community there. The community's a vital part of crime prevention, taking knives off the street. And we still receive a lot of information from members of the community about who's carrying knives, and that all forms part of targeting the right people in the right place at the right time. Stop and search figures show that we're quite good doing that, taking those knives off the street. Other initiatives as well. Knives to Schools initiative, where If we have information to this stage before we have information that a young person might be carrying a knife, we communicate that to education as soon as we can, and they're able to stop that person at school gates, sales bags, etc. And we recover a lot of weapons that way as well. It's certainly something we're alive to, we're aware of, and although our figures do show a rise, I do generally think that's down to proactive policing work and the hard work we put in, particularly among plain clothes officers as well, who we have out there, who are a great resource to use when it comes to taking weapons off the street.
I think you would like to contribute to this.
After yourself, I think the important thing is that the No Life Spare Lives is a youth like Scotland initiative. Right, it came from a community in Scotland. It's not just in the libraries. With Scotland, it's a youth initiative. And we have seen a reduction in funding over the years for that. I think it was like 12 years ago that was down here as your sales councillor. And I think the key thing is that it's important that we've now embedded that into other programmes across the board, working with my colleagues in Scotland and a school college. So it is continually used. You'll see a spike in knife crime as we go. It's never been away. It's just obviously it's getting reported better now. But the initiatives are still there. We're also working very closely with Youth Scotland again around the way that they've changed their model, because they've now changed it looking at families and not just carriers of knives. So there's a real process. And the council still there involved as Youth around that. So we are still working on it. I think it's a worthwhile initiative. But as you know, we've all got trolls that goes up and down, but we're all aware of that, and we are aware of some instances and we pull that back to the police. But it's important that we continue these works, and there's some good work in on schools and also well youth workers in the streets.
No, I'm really reassured by them words, and thanks for this issue with your. I'm really reassured that we're still doing our best there to try to identify. Thank you.
If I remember correctly, Councillor Moran, you were the chair of Safe Communities. I was your vice chair.
You're a vice chair.
I can remember you delegating the euro to me.
What do you mean you're
Councillor Jackson, you have a question.
Thanks, David. It's just to kind of chip on in this same debate, David. And I suppose as a resident, not as a councillor, my curiosity is the circumstances in which somebody would be carrying a knife. They get caught carrying a knife because they're out involved in other criminality. They just decided to go out into the community, carry a knife because they think they might be under threat or safety. It's just this issue about why somebody would go out and carry a knife, stop and search. I know you're saying it's intelligence led, which is proving really helpful. And I would assume, sorry, I'm just thinking out loud, I'm assuming these figures, which are higher, will provide you with enough evidence to then go and look at try and get the figures down again, because there's obviously been a reason for the spike. So it's not about the circumstances. Why would somebody go with a knife and he's catched up involved in criminality, or it's just intelligence led, such and such has left the house with a knife and we're going to go and stop and search?
So I can answer the first part of that, because of the 135 offences in bladed weapons, 89 of these relate to the use of those weapons in other criminal.
Right. Okay.
So it's not quite 50. Well, what was that? 55, 60%. Trying to somebody better at maths will be able to work that one out for me. But there are a number of people who are just carrying knives for no other reason than to what they will say to us is to protect themselves. And that might be because of existing drug issues, because they're sourcing or they're supplying drugs. It's all mixed up in and around other criminal behaviour. Now, obviously, as David alluded to, there'll be some young people, there'll be some people entering school with knives, and those are really opportunities for us to put a stop and prevent those, because that's real misinformation and misguided behaviour. Really, most of the knives that we take off the streets are involved in are people that are involved in other kinds of criminality, and that's where our kind of intelligence-led stop searches will come from.
I suppose following on to that is anybody who's caught with a knife and convicted of carrying a knife, do you find that they reoffend? Is there a reoffend rate?
So I don't have the figures for reoffences with bladed weapons, and again, I would imagine that that's very much going to depend on how we're intercepting or taking that. But my strong suspicion is yes, they will be.
Just one more question, David. It's just for one. It's just you've broken down the crimes into different categories. There's one here that seems crimes against society. Could you give us an idea of what kind of criminality would fall into that category?
Yes.
Because there's high numbers here, and we do have a breakdown, and I don't say it when you do it, it's really good because the figures are very helpful, but just for my kind of knowledge, what kind of crime would fall into crime against society?
So I always like to bring this sheet with me, which gives a breakdown of what everything is. I don't have it with me just now, but I will.
I mean,
I will tell you from this. Give me 1 second. And some of your fire ratings and things like that will come into that category.
Right. Okay.
So it's distinct because we've had this discussion before at one of the alliance boards.
Because we've got a miscellaneous category.
Because we have, there's a miscellaneous category, and some of the crimes against society will be things like bail offences, and some of those will fit into that category. So it's distinct from disorder and antisocial behaviour. And so it is quite a difficult thing. I do remember we had to have this outlined at one of the alliance boards because of one was increasing, one was decreasing, and it was like where's the sweet spot between them. But the crimes against society can increase significantly with proactive policing.
It's maybe an unfair question. I apologise.
Okay, Councillor Jensen.
Thanks.
Thank you. I don't see any questions in the chamber. I see nothing online. We'll move on to the next agenda item. Agenda item number 3, presentation by Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. Rod. Perhaps we should explain why it's a presentation today.
Yes, I was going to go and start at the end. So this, as happens every year, this is our the meeting we follow with our normal report period. So we are unable to provide a scrutiny report this meeting. The next meeting we will assume business as usual and we'll get a full scrutiny report. So when this meeting occurs, we always contact the convener to offer some alternative solutions, whether it be a spotlight or etc. So on this occasion, we're just going to do a general overview of the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, where we currently are at the moment, our kind of structure, how we operate, and some of the challenges that we face moving forward. So, to start off with, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, we're the 4th largest fire and rescue service in the world. The only services bigger than ourselves are the Fire Department of the City of New York, the Paris Fire Brigade, and the Tokyo Fire Department, all of which are metropolitan services covering a single city, whereas we are very much a metropolitan stroke provincial service, and we are covering all of Scotland, both urban and rural. We are the largest fire and rescue service in the UK by pretty much every major measure, whether that be number of firefighters, number of fire stations, or the geographical area that we provide a service to. We are structured into 2 service delivery areas, so this is something we just recently restructured. We had 3 service delivery areas, one for the west, one for the east, and one for the north. We have now restructured to 2. Those are now east and north mainland, and the Western Isles, Orkney and Shetland, or WIOS as we refer to it in-house. Each service delivery area is headed by a Deputy Assistant Chief Officer, who is the head of service delivery for each of the SDAs. And each of those service delivery areas are further divided into 14 local senior officer areas, each of which is aligned to the boundaries of the 1 and 3 local authority areas. As the title suggests, each LSO area is led by a local senior officer who holds a rank of area commander. The LSO rank is particularly significant within SFRS, as along with the chief officer, it's the only rank within the service that's specifically named within the Fire Scotland Act as having a statutory responsibility for ensuring the service delivery of the organisation's legal duties. Inverclyde sits within East Renfrewshire and Inverclyde senior officer area, and Eddie is our local senior officer, so he is the named man within the Act. So this map is just a quick map with an illustration. This is the west area of west and Wynos. And within that, we have 6 LSO areas within the west. Those being Dumfries and Galloway, Lanarkshire, East North and South Ayrshire, City of Glasgow, East and West Lanarkshire and the Gyle and Bute, and of course East Hampshire, Hampshire and Clyde. And the Eastern Mainland, it makes up the remainder of the local authorities, so Aberdeen City, Aberdeenshire and Murray, City of Edinburgh, Falkirk and West Lothian, Highland, Mid Lothian, East Lothian and Scottish Borders, Perth and Ross, Angus and Dundee, and finally Plant Manager, Fife and Stirling. So we have 256 strategically located fire stations across Scotland, and these comprise 74 old-time stations and 282 on-call stations. Those on-call stations are split between 240 volunteer and 240 retained and 42 volunteer stations. We currently have 7,525 staff in total. This includes both uniformed and non-uniformed support personnel. Of that total, 6,007 are uniformed operational staff working across our range of duty systems. Currently we operate 5 duty systems, some of those tied to the station as mentioned, so we are full-time, retained and volunteer. Alongside that we have one station which operates a day crewing system, which is in Livingston, and then we have officers like Eddie and myself who are on the flexi duty officer duty system. We have a pretty equal split, and although we have far more retained stations the whole time, we have a pretty even split in terms of staff, with 2,754 full-time staff, 2,734 on calls, retained staff, and then the 255 volunteers that man our 42 volunteer stations on top. At FDO level, we have 264 flexi duty officers across Scotland, going from the rank of station commander up to chief officer. And we have 165 staff who work in our 3 operations control rooms across the country. Our uniform staff, we have 351 of those who work in what we call day duty roles, so that would be training instructors, fire safety enforcement officers, and those types of roles. And we have 903 support staff. We currently manage a fleet of 1,576 vehicles. These comprise operational vehicles, support vehicles, and a reserve pool. Within the fleet, 774 of these are fire appliances, and 637 are frontline appliances, with the remaining 137 been allocated to training or held within vehicle workshops as part of the reserve pool in order to cover outages due to breakdowns or routine maintenance. This slide just gives a breakdown of some of the vehicles we have and the numbers. So rescue pumps are our standard fire appliance. We have 416 of those. Medium rescue pumps are something which we are just starting to phase in. We've introduced 38 of them. These tend to be assigned to retained stations in more rural areas. They effectively look like a full-size fire appliance, except they are, as the name suggests, slightly lighter than medium weight. Rapid response units are a much smaller appliance, generally running with a crew of 4 riders, and those are a van-sized vehicle that can be driven on a Cat C licence, which assists with some of the driving training requirements round about some of our retained and volunteer stations. And officer response cars, we have one of them for each of the flexi duty officers, so that number tallies with a number of flexi duty officers. In terms of specialist appliances, we have a gamut of them, and some of them are just illustrated here. The wildfire 4x4 ATV combination that we'll talk about in a bit more detail later on, because they're one of the new things we have introduced, with some of the challenges that we're facing in the changing incident types. All of these are strategically based across the country, strategic locations. Some of them are a national resource and can be moved to cover incidents across the whole of the UK through our mutual aid agreements with our partner fire and rescue services in Wales and Northern Ireland. And that's just a few pictures to illustrate some of our appliances. So on there we've got an aerial ladder platform at the top left, one of our new medium weight rescue pumps in the centre, a rapid response unit at the top right, and the bottom centre is our new wildfire support units. So rank structure, so we go from chief officer, so we have one chief officer with one deputy chief officer, and we have 3 assistant chief officers, and each of those has a specific director at the charge of. So we have an assistant chief officer for operational delivery, one for prevention, and one for training, safety, and assurance. We have 5 deputy assistant chief officers, 24 area commanders, so that's our LSOs and area commanders who operate within directorate roles. We then come down to my rank, where we have 70 at group commander level. We then have 160 station commanders, 917 watch commanders, and 1,195 crew commanders. And then more importantly, our firefighters are out there on frontline appliances and doing the important roles of engaging our community as well as dealing with their incidents. We've got 3,982 of those. And we make a definition between firefighters and those who are firefighters either in development or trainee firefighters, and they are indicated by having a yellow diamond on the front left and back right of their helmet. So to put some of that into context in terms of Inverclyde. Within Inverclyde we have 3 stations. Across them we have 7 appliances. Based there we have 5 rescue pumps, 1 aerial appliance and 1 rapid response unit. The rapid response unit sitting within Guruk. We have 104 personnel within the station across Inverclyde, 65 full-time and 41 on call, all of whom operate on the methane duty system. And that breaks down into 13 watch commanders, 22 crew commanders, 48 firefighters, and we currently have 21 firefighters in development within the area. That is as a consequence of the retirement profile of the service, and our number of firefighters, either in development or at trainee level, is much higher than it traditionally has been, and that will probably continue for a foreseeable period of time with our ongoing retirement profile. In terms of the management team, we have 1 area commander who's a senior officer, this man here. We have 3 group commanders, 1 for each of the local authority areas within the LSO area, and we have 5 station commanders. Also attached to this at area level, we have the community action team, who I've spoken about before, and our fire safety enforcement team. We also have a number of training officers assigned to us, although they no longer are part of the local area, they have been managed nationally. They now form part of the national structure group, where they are seconded to our local area. So some of the statistics we attended in 2024-25. So that's in 4,610 incidents we attended, just under 1,200 of those were in Inverclyde. As you see, we still attend a large number of fires, despite the fact they have decreased over the years, we still attend a lot of them. Non-fire incidents are increasing over the time, particularly with assisting other agencies, those types of incidents. And of the fires we attend, secondary fires are by far still the dominant. We still had 8,811 primary fires. Just to give a bit of definition of that, a primary fire, to give you the textbook answer to that, is a fire which is potentially more serious, may cause harm to people or damage to property. To categorise the primary fire, these fires must either occur in a non-derelict building, vehicle, or some other outdoor structure. They must involve either fatalities, casualties, or rescues, or be attended by 5 or more pumping appliances. Secondary fires, generally small outdoor fires not involving people or property, and these can include refuse, grassland, fires in other buildings or vehicles, unless the fire involves casualties or rescues, by pumping appliances attended, in which case they default to primary fire. And the last category we have that we've got as under is chimney fires. They stand as a separate incident called, and believe it or not, we still had 332 chimney fires in 2024-25. But that is well down where it was even going back when I joined the service. We still do quite a bit more than that, but they are still out there. And in terms of casualties, as you can see, last 2024-25 we had 36. No, this is national. This is nationally. Last year we had no fire fatalities in Inverclyde last year. The number of fatal fire casualties nationally, that has been on a downward trend, and This year it's looking as if we will be around about 36 again, rather than down. We haven't had a number of additional fire fatalities this year across the country, which are probably going to build back up to that number, but we did look at we were heading downwards. Fairly recent that pushes back up to we will probably around about the 36 number this year. Do you want some of our challenges that we're facing? So obviously we have top of the list financial. So our budget for 2025-26 is £436 million. It's an increase of 23.8 million, or 5.7%. 287.6 million of that is for our resource budget, and 80% of that is staffing costs. And we have 48.4 million for our capital budget, which is it covers our buildings and assets. So as well, we're through the discussion around the SDR, we do have an ageing estate and also equipment. In late 2025, Audit Scotland stated that SFRS has a capital investment backlog estimated at £818 million. And taking into consideration the financial implications we're facing, this means that £48.4 million capital budget is short of the estimated £60 million a year that Audit Scotland suggested would be required to start bringing down that overall shortfall in our building and equipment budget in order to bring them up to standard. Hence why SDR has been on the radar for a wee while now, and obviously we will get a decision on that post-election. In terms of personnel, obviously with the amalgamation of the 8 previous fire and rescue services into a single national service, there's a need to standardise personnel numbers, duty systems and operating models. So this has led to a reduction in the number of full-time operational personnel, flexi-duty officers and control room personnel, as well as a reduction in our support staff. This obviously produced initial financial savings through the formation of SFRS and the reduced running costs. Alongside this, there has been no reduction in on-call personnel over the years through any decisions by the service, but SFRS, like most UK fire and rescue services, are encountering challenges in the attraction, recruitment and retention of on-call personnel. But that is something the service is addressing through its on-call improvement programme and the subsequent recommendations from the report off the back of that are going through implementation. And as I touched on earlier, changes to the fire pension scheme has also seen an increased number of full-time personnel choosing to retire from the service, and this obviously gives us that gap in terms of operational experience across the service, and hence why we have that slight imbalance to where we are with trainees and firefighting development compared to where we've been historically. Climate, as we're all aware of the changing climate, just handy that Storm Dave has come along this weekend just to add into the discussion. For us, incidents involving water and flooding are increasing, as are wildfires, and as well as an increased number of wildfires. Wildfires are becoming more serious that we're dealing with. So these are obviously challenges we're having to adapt in order to respond to. But it's also seen that we're getting an increased frequency of wildfires, as well as them being larger, and the scale of the incidents means that we have had to look at investment in our response to wildfires. So as I mentioned earlier, we talked about the 4x4 vehicles. So we have, over the last couple of years, we've invested 1.6 million to improve our ability to respond to wildfires. Alongside this investment, we've adopted a new wildfire strategy, within which we use a tiered response to ensure that wildfires are dealt with quickly and efficiently. And this includes using the latest technologies and techniques to safely bring incident to conclusion. So there are 4 tiers. We have tier 1 stations who are general first responders. They do the general firefighting with hose, beetles, spray, backpacks, sprayers, etc. We have tier 2 stations, so they have the 4x4 sprinter type vans with wildfire suppression and management equipment. This includes leaf blowers, excavation tools, beetles, and additional lighting equipment. And then we have the tier 3 stations, who are the specialist responders, who have a Ford Ranger with a trailer towing a Polaris ATV, which is fitted with a fire fogging unit. And they also carry further leaf blowers, excavation tools, beetles, and lighting. And those special responders, they have special wildfire PPE, and they are also currently receiving training in being able to do backburns and create fire breaks. And then last year is we have a number of wildfire tactical advisors who sit at flexi duty officer level who have had additional training, and they can provide advice and guidance to the incident commander on how to resolve wildfire incidents. In terms of what we do at wildfires, the approach that's taken by the incident commander will consider many different factors. These will include weather, location, life and property risks, any critical infrastructure that may be affected, and the terrain involved. And the primary concern is always going to be life safety, and that will take precedence over all other factors and the approach to be taken for dealing with it. With the support offered by non-fire service personnel, we will aim to do that in such a way as to incorporate that support into our plans in order that we can ensure that it's a managed and safe approach to using that assistance. And we will always do so in a way that doesn't compromise anyone's safety. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you very much, Rod. That was very comprehensive and really very interesting. Just one question. You said there was 3 fire services in the world that were bigger than the Scottish one. One was New York. What was the other 2?
Paris and Tokyo.
Sorry?
Paris and Tokyo.
Paris and Tokyo. I've been to all those places. That's insipid. Colleagues, any questions for Rod after that comprehensive? Councillor Moran.
No, thank you. Thanks for the report. I have to say, it would have been nice if we had something to look at, but if you understand that situation. To me, it sounds that the fire services, is changing. We'll not have it, you know. I'm another thing, I'm the Health Board, and we've now got Health Board West Engines for Scotland. So you could do this road a shared resources, and to make it, obviously if you've got resources lying empty in Murrable, you could certainly use it, down the road about Glasgow, whatever, So I think that's the road that you're on. But my question would be is, with the infrastructure within round about Glasgow, which is a disaster, and then there's no trying to cover it, and the forecast is to get worse. The Kingston Bridge is going to be getting shut down because it's falling apart, basically. And it can't put on the A74 because that's already at full capacity. So how would that affect the availability of resources being shared within that area and its role and effect going down to the rest of us? So has there been any thoughts into that going forward?
Good point.
So in terms of how we respond to our incidents, our control room use what's known as dynamic mobilising. So they will always mobilise the closest resource to an incident. So as you say, we do share resources both across LSO areas and across SPAs nationally. In terms of the infrastructure, long term, obviously that's something that has to be looked at in terms of the government, in terms of the roads and things, but in terms of ourselves, we do get notification of where there are roadwork activities taking place, and as we always have done historically, and we will work our routes around about that. One of the things we do have is most of our stations, they are very good with topography, so they tend to have a good knowledge of the road networks and how they can actually route themselves around about it, to get a route that is usable and the speed is, it's not always possible. Sometimes we may have to just stick with the route that we would be taking, and as you say, with increasing traffic that can slow us down slightly, but we will still manage to make progress. Our drivers are trained to make progress through traffic, so we will continue to support that. But as I say, it may be a case of the control room will have to look at how they resource these from alternative routes rather than using what would be the next closest station. You're going to have to look at a station on the other side of the potential bottlenecks to be able to provide that as a speed response.
Thank you. That other question I'm going to ask you is, yesterday they announced that they're banning altogether barbecues in the Cairngorm National Park. You think that was something that you would do here in Lochlow and whatever, Are there any plans to maybe ask them to follow suit and just ban the barbecues and maybe make it a bit safer for for the cruise.
Well, that will obviously be a decision for the management of the park to make that decision, but they certainly do engage with us, and we do have in the lead up to the kind of spring into summer period where we are likely to get those more wildfires. The LSO area within that area do engage with the park management and the rangers round about fire safety, etc. So we will certainly provide them advice and guidance, but it hasn't been a decision for the park management to decide whether that's the route they wanted to take. We would advise one way or the other, that would be pulled into them.
No, that's fine. It's just fire safety. Yesterday, and I thought we might have to put the role as well. Same for it has.
Okay, Robert?
Right, thank
you. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, David. You mentioned the capital budget and the pressures it's under, and I don't want to get any detail about that. See our local stations, what kind of condition they're in, how far down the pecking order are they for any repair work? Obviously, you know, when you guys are out fighting fires and there's a carcinogenics and wash down that equipment, what is the facilities like locally?
So locally, our three stations in Clyde are actually in pretty good condition compared to a lot of our stations, and much as we do have the capital issues, we are still making improvements on recent times, both in the last 12 months. Being has seen had some work done on its roof, it's a new flooring, new blinds, etc. So the facilities are getting maintained. It's just some of our stations which are at that stage where they're at the end of their lifespan or we're struggling to maintain them. They're the ones that have the priorities for replacement. Particularly, we have a few that are affected, obviously the back panel, and so they're the priorities for replacement. But there is still ongoing work to maintain those stations. So our property have graded all the stations on a RAG system from red, amber, and green, and our three are within the green. So they're still in a good state of repair, and they're getting maintained. And they will aim to keep that level of maintenance up in order to keep them in the green, because that then doesn't become an issue for further down the line by letting them decay to the point where they're then moving down the RAG assessment. So no, overall they are in very good condition with a lot of stations.
Yeah. I think when we hear the reports, we obviously focus on the fires, the stuff that's going on outside, but I think it's important that we recognise the safety of your own personnel, and I kind of read, I think it was Firestone report where we're talking about the carcinogenics and other stations, but it's good to know where stations as you through the RAG are sitting at green. That's good to know. Thanks.
Okay with that, Colin?
Yeah.
Can I just come in?
Yeah, sure.
Just to add in regards to the safety of personnel, which is absolutely paramount. A lot of stuff taking small steps towards the improvements when it comes to keeping firefighters safe, especially when it comes to contaminants and how we operate, and that might change as we move forward into our station design. But the small improvements that we've already made in relation to how we manage contaminants at instant ground, what we do when we come back into station, how we kind of clean our PPE as well. So very much that contaminants is very much in the forefront. However, to add to that, it will take some time before we actually get to a position where all our stations are absolutely up to date, with all modern technology, how we can absolutely keep safe. But just to add to that, just even some of the keeping staff safe when it comes to mental health and a lot of the stuff that we've done in regards to that, very much safety of our staff is absolutely paramount as we do move forward.
Thank you.
Yes. I don't see any questions in the chamber. I don't see any online. Thank you very much for that, Rod. That was very, very interesting. Move on to new business, agenda item number 4, local police and fire scrutiny panel update report. Ross.
Thanks, Chair. So the report provides an overview of the key national and local developments across East Scotland and Scottish Fire and Rescue Service presented today for noting. So paragraphs 3.2 to 3.17 provides a number of updates from the Scottish Police Authority Board meeting from February. That highlights that there's been positive progress in a number of areas, including targeted enforcement against retail crime, national prevention campaigns, and the continued rollout of body-worn video and enhanced work with training. Also, a strong focus on partnership working, particularly in mental health and cyber harms, and protecting vulnerable people. Paragraphs 3.18 to 3.20 present an update on the final draft of the strategic policing plan for 2026 to 2029, which was presented to the SP board and sets out the priorities going forward around safer communities, victim focused services, prevention, workforce wellbeing and sustainable policing. In paragraph 3.21, we have an update on the January publication of the Best Value in Policing audit, which was conducted jointly by HMICS and Audit Scotland. It found that the Police Scotland was well led and managed, but also provided 7 recommendations which call for greater strategic focus, stronger forward reporting and faster progress on reform to ensure sustainable, effective policing. Paragraphs 3.22 to 3.25 provide some updates for Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, where investment is reported as ongoing, including a new system and further workforce training, but there's wider service changes, financial pressure remaining for the service, with decisions on fire station proposals delayed until after the Scottish Parliament elections. Finally, paragraph 3.26 refers to the convener's letter to the Cabinet Secretary, which raised the panel concerns with the Scottish Government that the budget settlement for Police Scotland and Scottish Fire and Rescue Service may not sustain service capacity but bring resilience locally. The Scottish Government points is contained in the appendices to the report, and that recognises that there are pressures, but says that the record funding provided should sustain those services with operational decisions left to service leaders. That concludes my update, and I'd like to open up for questions. Obviously, partners from Scotland and Scottish Fire and Rescue Service are here with the operational knowledge.
Thank you, Ross. You're really saying that my letter to the Cabinet Secretary did not produce an increase in the budget for police and fire and rescue.
It doesn't seem so.
Thank you for that. Bodyboard cameras, Chief Inspector?
Yes, I'll be here shortly, before the end of the month. Training's been rolled out just now. It's going to be a great asset for us if you just quick.
Before the end of the month?
Waiting a long time, yeah, so we're glad to have the meeting.
Good, that's encouraging. Thank you. Councillor Moran?
I don't suppose the Chief was quite able to answer, but it's on the Police Authority's Chair's report, and this says here that the Scottish Government revealed proposed 26-27 budget on the 30th of January 26. Includes increased revenue for capital funded for policing, and the budget bill has been assessing the budget applications with the account officers and Police Scotland. A further update will be reviewed by the Resources Committee in February and March. I looked on the webpage, and the last meeting they had, the Resources Committee, was the 19th of March, which put the recommendation to the board meeting, which took place on the 25th of March, and it just says that they're still in negotiations with the Scottish Government. So, disappointed, but I dare say that they will announce the budget after May, but I think it's pretty poor that they've held it back until after these elections, and I want to make that public. It's not very good that they've done that.
I think you're right, Councillor Moran, you really are, and both services really do need some more money, and it's been over a period of time they've not had that money, year after year. Thank you. Any more questions on Ross's report? No?
Aye.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your light. It was the sunlight. Councillor Mayor.
Thank you, through yourself. And it's regarding the reply from the Cabinet Secretary to your letter, page 23, second last paragraph. I think we can go over quickly. A single point service ensures that local divisions can access specialist expertise and resources at regional and national level prior to I presume, prior to 2012, professional support of this nature was more limited. I would then say that is subject to scrutiny and is not the case. I can give you just one example on that, straight from the Federation, and it happened not too long ago when a local unit in Inverclyde asked for a dog unit with a dog to search a particular premises for a particular reason, which was very important. They were told that the nearest dog unit was in Edinburgh. And I can give you many more examples of that. So I'd like to really question that paragraph, that I don't think today that we have the the personnel who may be able to answer that. So it's more a comment. Thanks.
Thank you. Would you make a note of that, Ross, please? And perhaps you go back to his, if there's anything can be done. Thank you, Ross. Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, David. Just a quick one. It's 311. It's domestic abuse and don't be that guy campaign. It's just to ask Inverclyde councils involved in this, are we involved in the schools? And if we are, could we maybe get a bigger report on it?
Tony?
Sorry, sure, I don't know if I maybe take this.
Take off line for them.
We'll come back offline.
Okay, thanks.
You're copying me as well. Thanks very much. Any other questions? I see nothing in the chamber, nothing online. I draw the meeting to a close. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Thanks to the police and fire and rescue for your attendance and your reports. Thank you, everybody.